The Nile River is the longest river in Africa, flowing for over 6,650 kilometers or 4,132 miles northwards through 11 countries. Its journey begins in the highlands of East Africa and winds its way through diverse landscapes from lush forests to arid deserts, before finally emptying into the Mediterranean Sea. For millennia, the Nile has been a source of life, shaping the civilizations that arose along its banks. Its waters have nurtured the growth of some of the world's earliest and most influential cultures, providing not just sustenance, but also a means of transport and communication. Nowhere is this more evident than in Egypt, where the Nile's annual floods brought fertile silt that nourished crops and sustained life. These predictable floods allowed the ancient Egyptians to develop advanced agricultural techniques, which in turn supported the growth of their civilization. The ancient Egyptians revered the Nile as a god, recognizing its vital importance to their very existence. They built temples and monuments along its banks, and their art and literature are filled with references to the river's life-giving properties. From the time of the pharaohs to the present day, Egypt's history, culture, and economy have been inextricably intertwined with the Nile. The river has been a constant presence, shaping the country's development and identity over thousands of years. The river provides almost all of Egypt's water needs, supporting agriculture, industry, and a rapidly growing population. Modern irrigation systems and infrastructure projects continue to rely heavily on the Nile's waters to sustain the country's economy. Even today, the majority of Egypt's 105 million people live within a few kilometers of the Nile Valley, a testament to the river's enduring significance. The densely populated areas along the riverbanks highlight the ongoing dependence on this vital waterway. The Nile's importance to Egypt is not just historical or cultural, it is existential. The river's waters are essential for daily life, from drinking and cooking to farming and industry. Without the Nile, Egypt would be a desert. The stark contrast between the lush green Nile Valley and the surrounding arid desert underscores the river's crucial role in sustaining life. The country receives very little rainfall, and its vast desert regions are uninhabitable without access to the Nile's waters. The river's flow is the lifeblood of the nation, making human habitation and agriculture possible in an otherwise inhospitable environment. The river is Egypt's lifeline, and its continued flow is essential for the country's survival. It supports not only human life, but also a diverse array of plant and animal species that depend on its waters. For centuries, Egypt enjoyed unchallenged control over the Nile's waters. This control allowed the country to develop extensive irrigation systems and build monumental structures like the Aswan Dam, which further harnessed the river's power. The river's flow originated in countries to the south, but these were either sparsely populated or lacked the technical capacity to significantly alter the river's course. This ensured a steady and reliable flow of water to Egypt for much of its history. This situation began to change in the 20th century, as newly independent nations in the Nile Basin asserted their own claims to the river's resources. Modern infrastructure projects and diplomatic negotiations have since reshaped the dynamics of water distribution in the region, making the future of the Nile's flow a critical issue for all countries involved. Egypt's dependence on the Nile makes it particularly sensitive to any changes in the river's flow. Throughout history, Egypt has viewed any attempt to control the Nile upstream as a direct threat to its national security. This concern is deeply rooted in the country's history and its reliance on the Nile for its very survival. In 1959, Egypt signed an agreement with Sudan, the only other country through which the Nile flows before reaching Egypt. This agreement, which gave Egypt the lion's share of the Nile's waters, has been the basis for water management in the region for over 6 decades. However, this agreement did not include Ethiopia, where the Blue Nile, the Nile's main tributary, originates.
The construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD in Ethiopia, has reignited Egypt's historical anxieties about its water security. The GERD, located on the Blue Nile just before it enters Sudan, is set to be the largest hydroelectric dam in Africa. While Ethiopia hails the dam as a crucial step towards its development, Egypt fears that the filling and operation of the GERD could significantly reduce its water supply. Egypt's concerns are not unfounded. The GERD's reservoir has the capacity to hold back more than 74 billion cubic meters of water, more than the entire annual flow of the Blue Nile in some years. The speed at which Ethiopia fills this massive reservoir will have a direct impact on the amount of water flowing downstream to Egypt.
While Egypt's concerns about the GERD have taken center stage, Sudan finds itself in a complex and precarious position, caught between the need for development and the risk of increased dependence. Like Egypt, Sudan is heavily reliant on the Nile for its water needs. The river is the lifeblood of the nation, supporting millions of people and their livelihoods. The country depends on the river for irrigation, drinking water, and hydropower. Without the Nile, Sudan's agricultural sector would struggle, and its cities would face severe water shortages.
Sudan stands to benefit from the GERD in some ways. The dam promises to bring stability to the water flow, which could help Sudanese farmers plan their crops better and improve agricultural yields. The dam is expected to regulate the flow of the Blue Nile, reducing the risk of devastating floods that have plagued Sudan in the past. These floods have caused significant damage to homes, infrastructure, and farmland. Additionally, Sudan could potentially import cheap electricity generated by the GERD, boosting its own development. Access to affordable electricity could spur industrial growth and improve the quality of life for many Sudanese people. However, Sudan also shares some of Egypt's concerns about the potential negative impacts of the dam. The uncertainty surrounding the GERD's operation has led to anxiety among Sudanese officials. There are worries that the GERD could disrupt the flow of the Nile during the filling period, leading to water shortages downstream. This could have severe consequences for both urban and rural communities. Sudan is also concerned about the potential for the dam to reduce the amount of fertile silt that reaches its agricultural lands. This silt is crucial for maintaining soil fertility and agricultural productivity.
Moreover, the GERD's potential impact on the flow of the Blue Nile raises concerns about the operation of Sudan's own dams on the Nile, including the Rosaire Dam. The efficiency and safety of these dams could be compromised. Changes in water flow could affect the efficiency of these dams and disrupt Sudan's own hydropower generation. This could lead to power shortages and affect the country's energy security. Sudan's position is further complicated by its close relationship with both Egypt and Ethiopia. Navigating these diplomatic waters requires careful balancing of interests and alliances. Sudan has long-standing historical ties with Egypt, and the two countries have cooperated on Nile water management for decades. This cooperation has been vital for both nations. At the same time, Sudan recognizes Ethiopia's right to develop its own resources and sees the potential for economic benefits from the GERD. The challenge lies in finding a balance that serves the interests of all parties involved.
Section 4. Ethiopia's Perspective. A Quest for Energy Independence. For Ethiopia, the GERD represents a vital step towards achieving energy independence and fostering economic development.
With a rapidly growing population of over 120 million people, Ethiopia faces an urgent need to expand its energy capacity to meet the demands of its growing economy. The GERD is expected to generate over 6,000 megawatts of electricity, more than doubling Ethiopia's current energy output. This surge in electricity generation would not only address Ethiopia's pressing energy needs, but also provide surplus power that could be exported to neighboring countries, creating a valuable source of revenue.
Beyond its economic significance, the GERD holds immense symbolic importance for Ethiopia. The project is seen as a source of national pride, showcasing Ethiopia's engineering prowess and its determination to rise above its past struggles with poverty and underdevelopment.
Ethiopia argues that it has the right to utilize its own natural resources for the betterment of its people. It maintains that the GERD is designed to be a purely hydroelectric project, with no intention of depriving downstream countries of their fair share of water. Ethiopia has repeatedly emphasized its commitment to finding a cooperative solution that addresses the concerns of all parties involved. However, it insists that any agreement must recognize Ethiopia's right to equitable and reasonable utilization of the Nile's waters.
Section 5. A decade of talks, the search for common ground. The GERD dispute, has been a major point of contention in the Nile Basin for over a decade, involving complex geopolitical and environmental issues. Since Ethiopia first announced its ambitious plans to build the dam in 2011, Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia have engaged in numerous rounds of negotiations aimed at reaching a tripartite agreement that would satisfy all parties involved.
These negotiations have centered around two main issues: the filling of the GERD's reservoir and the dam's long-term operation, both of which have significant implications for the region's water security and economic development. Egypt has pushed for a slow-filling process over an extended period to minimize the impact on its water supply, which is crucial for its agriculture and drinking water needs. It has also called for a binding agreement that guarantees a minimum annual flow of Nile water to Egypt, even during periods of drought, to ensure the sustainability of its water resources.
Ethiopia, on the other hand, has sought a faster filling schedule to expedite the dam's completion and begin generating electricity as soon as possible, which is vital for its development and energy needs. It has argued that a more flexible approach to water management is necessary, taking into account the variability of rainfall and river flow in the Nile Basin, which can be unpredictable and fluctuate significantly.
Sudan, caught between its upstream and downstream neighbors, has advocated for a balanced approach that addresses the concerns of both sides, aiming to maintain regional stability and cooperation. It has called for a transparent and cooperative mechanism for data sharing and joint monitoring of the dam's impact on the Nile's flow to ensure that all parties have access to accurate and timely information.
Despite years of talks facilitated by international observers and technical experts, a comprehensive and binding agreement has remained elusive, with each country holding firm to its national interests. Negotiations have been marred by mistrust, accusations, and a lack of political will to compromise on core issues, making it difficult to find a mutually acceptable solution that ensures the equitable and sustainable use of the Nile's waters.